Hello and welcome to Deep Blue Sea, the podcast. I'm your host, Jay Cluett. On this show, we have been through the entire Deep Blue Sea trilogy scene by scene. Now looking at some Deep Blue Sea adjacent films. That's films directed by Rennie Harlin, featuring aquatic action, or sharks, or in this case, just called Shark. Because today we're talking about Shark! Exclamation mark, from 1969. What is Shark? Well, it's directed by Samuel Fuller. It stars Burt Reynolds as Kane, who is a gun runner who gets stranded in a small town in Sudan with no way of getting out, and the police after him. Desperate for a job, he goes in a league with the Professor and Anna, Barry Sullivan, and Sylvia Pinnell, who know of are doing some kind of expedition out in the water that turns out to be looking for buried treasure in shark-infested ocean, and hilarity ensues. So, normally, when we talk about these kind of films, we have on someone who is like a fan of the film, or has seen the film, or has heard of the film. But occasionally, I'll just present a list of films I want to cover to a guest, and they'll be like, I don't know, that one, which is the case today. As we have a return guest, she's been on. I think we've depleted the stock of films she wanted to talk about. And now because she was on for Sphere, 47 Meters Down, and 47 Meters Down, Uncaged, and she's now back to talk about Shark! Exclamation mark. It's Jess Manzo. Jess, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me. I don't know if I should, gamble. I don't know if luck is on my side after randomly picking this movie based on Shark! Exclamation point. What could this be? And then I looked at the movie poster, and I was like, that's a pretty good movie poster. And I was like, I'll just go for it. And I knew nothing else about the movie going into it. That was it.
I mean, that's about as much as I knew as well. I knew that this film had sharks in it because I had read the title. And that's all I knew. And, looking at the other films that were on the list that you could have picked from, you could have gone better. It could have gone a lot worse. Who knows?
Yeah.
I won't say what else on that list because we'll probably cover it at some point. Who knows? You might be forced to come back and cover one of them at some point. We'll see. But yeah, so I went in completely blind for this one, as did you, and we'll see how that worked out. So a little history on Shark! Exclamation mark. It was released a couple of times under a few different names. It was originally called Kane. I don't know with an exclamation mark or not. And it was re-released in 1975 post Jaws as Man-Eater to try and cash in on some of that Jaws money, as so many people did. But when it was originally called, well, I guess it was originally based on the book His Bones Are Coral by Victor Canning, and it was going to be released under the title Twist of the Knife, I think. But during production of this film, a stuntman by the name of Jose Marco was killed by a shark, and except he wasn't. I don't know how much of this you know, Jess, but there were rumors of this guy Jose Marco being mauled by a shark, and this was picked up by Life magazine, who did a 4-page feature of it in one of their issues. You can buy the front page of this as a poster on postermuseum.com if you have $250 going spare, which I don't, not for this. And they did a whole feature on Shark wrangles a man. Sorry, Shark mangles a man. Shark will rip you apart. It's a big advert for the film Shark! Exclamation mark missing from the poster. In which they detail how this stuntman, Jose Marco, was, mauled by a shark. It was a great white that had gotten through some protective netting, attacked the guy. He was taken to hospital and died a couple of days later. And there were pictures to go with it. And that's when the film's title was changed to Shark, to kind of capitalize on this gruesome death of a stuntman. So this was after the film had been shot. It was during editing at this point. So the director, Samuel Fuller, didn't like this, and he's been at odds with the production coming a bunch during the production. So he quit 4 weeks into the editing process, and they finished editing it without him. When he saw the finished results, he said it was awful. Terrible is his word, and he wanted his name removed from it, and they refused. so that his name was still on it. If there's no resemblance to his original vision, apparently. Because Samuel Fuller, a known director, I've seen nothing else he's done, but he's done like some classic cinema and was like a big deal at the time. But there was in this dive shop owner by the name of Dewey Bergman, who did his own like private investigating because this shark attack, it did the whole Jaws thing of taking tourism out of the area. Because people are like, I'm not going to go diving there. This guy died from a shark. So he went and did some investigating and found that Jose Marco never existed. Appeared on no documents. There was no local newspapers did any kind of publication on this supposed death. Only in Life magazine, who were not in like I think it was shot in Mexico. They were not in the area where this is shot. It all sounded very fishy. No pun intended. And yeah, it turns out that it was a lie. Life magazine were duped. They've come out and said, we may have been wrong about this, sorry. No one has officially said this is a lie. I want someone to come forward and say, yep, did it, hands up, it was us. But the film didn't do very well. Because people were turned off by the marketing a little bit, so this all backfired. And yeah, I love the production story behind Shark. And how it's conned, because there's not actually a lot of sharks in this frickin' film. So because I was happy that you picked Shark, just because this is actually the 100th film that I've worked out how deep and how blue it is, and I figured like a film called Shark ! Would be like a pivotal. Hey, this is a momentous occasion. Let's celebrate it with Shark, and then it turns out Shark, not that many sharks, so a little bit of a letdown, but we're still going to talk about it. How much of that story were you aware of when I told you don't look at anything else?
I did a little research post-watching, so I had heard that. But that is just a ridiculous story. At first, when I saw the fake story of, stunt diver was killed and footage might be in the movie, yes. I was like, I don't want to see that. I don't want to have seen it. And then when I saw it was fake, I was like, oh, great. But also Life magazine, you guys should have fact checkers. Like, I don't want to hear this, I got duped. Like, you're supposed to fact check this yourself. But I'm sure they just wanted to sell magazines.
Well, they were presented with photos of Jose Marco, like because it was being filmed, air quotes. And so they had this footage and then photos. But the photos were of a different kind of shark than was described in the attack. They said it was a great white shark and it was a grey shark. They look different. And this is I think what clued the diver onto, maybe this isn't right, because this isn't the shark they're talking about. So yeah, I think it would have just taken, all Life magazine had to do was go to a shark expert and say, does this look right? But they didn't do that, it would seem.
When this movie opened and it was a diver going underwater, I was like, this is blue. This is somewhat deep. There's a shark. Like, this is going to be promising entry for the Deep Blue Sea podcast. And then, like, the next 40 minutes of the movie happened.
Yeah, because it starts with a diver, and we see a shark at 105 seconds into the film, which, that's great. I would love it when we see sharks early on. There's actually... We've already recorded the episode, but there's an upcoming film I did with Will Slater called A Tank. There's a Bollywood shark film where similar thing. There's a shark in the opening credits, and then no sharks for 50 minutes of film. But after that 50 minutes, it's pretty much nothing but sharks. In Shark, there's that's not the case. There's a lot of diving, not a lot of sharks. Like 3 people over the course of the film get eaten by sharks. More might get eaten after the film ends. Kind of, but that's off screen. But there's not in it a lot, and there's not a lot of like great shark model work or like scenes where they actually get attacked. It's more like here's some B-roll footage of sharks swimming around. We're gonna use this shot, I don't know, 8 more times in the film of this shark in the distance swimming around, and then here's a swimmer not in the same shot, and then here's a real close up of these two meeting, where you can't really make out anything. And that's the extent of the shark action that we get. And given that we talk about this film because it has sharks in it, it's a little disappointing.
I thought some of the parts where the divers were in a one shot with a shark, which is kind of confusing if there were like actual sharks or if they were faked or what it was a little like too much for me. In like it seemed a little like I was like, am I watching a snuff film? Like, is this diver? Are they actually filming a diver like wrestling with a shark right now, or is this staged? Because I was like a little concerned about what was going on, especially because towards the beginning there's this super ominous like
The
thank you.
dedication, yeah.
Yeah, like
10 minutes
thanking.
in, 10 minutes in, it says this film is dedicated to the fearless stuntmen who repeatedly risk their lives against attacks in shark-infested waters during the filming of this picture. That's 10 minutes in. I found that like super jarring and like take you out of. You're watching a film. Like stop what you're doing. That's that should be like pre-film, not
Yeah.
after a cold open.
I also was like, this production seems highly unethical. Like, what is happening? Like the message gave me a sense of foreboding. Like some people were put in unsafe situations and we're very grateful to them for like risking life and limb. I'm just like, do I want to be a part of this? I don't know.
It's like you kind of want the dedication to end with rather them than us, right? Kind of just but yeah, it is. And then for them to have, this is what I hate, is them to have used the supposed death in the marketing. Like, imagine if the talent of the Crow was like, see the film where Brandon Lee died.
Yeah.
Like, that's not why people saw the Crow. The Crow's great.
Yeah. It
It's
would
great.
be so distasteful.
And they don't actually put the shot where he dies in the film. Anyway, let's get past that because it's not real. It's just scumbag marketing people
Yeah.
living up to their reputation. Uh, so so yes, we see a diver and a early shark sighting. That diver does get killed by a shark. And he turns out to be he's working for the professor and Anna. So we cut from his death to his funeral, where Anna is paying off his mother. Basically, they're mourning. This guy was called Mohammed. They're mourning Mohammed and giving him some money. And I liked how business-like it all was with the mourning mother, like counting the money, like
Yeah.
at her son's funeral. Like, it's all very transactional in this town. Like,
Yeah.
everyone does something for a reason. No one's just out to be kind. Every action, even things like a doctor saving someone's life, is all like, now pay me a bottle
Yeah.
of booze, please.
There's not a lot of empathy in this movie.
There is none. Well, that's because there's no good people. Everyone's a scumbag. Every single person is an awful, awful human being, including
Yeah.
our hero. And this is apparently what drew Sam Fuller to the production. He wanted to make. I'll quote him. He's got a quote on Wikipedia where he said, "I liked the idea of making a story where, for once, the hero is really the heavy. The heavy is the girl. There's another heavy, and you find out in the end they're all heavies. So just they're I like to just. I want to make a film where you think there's a hero and he's a love interest, but actually they're all just scumbags. I
Yeah.
liked that. Which, so the final scene I really enjoyed when it's revealed that yeah, all of you scumbags, everyone, every single
I
person.
I thought the ending actually was a pretty decent ending for such a lackluster movie.
I completely agree. But we'll get there. We're try not to jump all the way ahead, although I did it as well. Sorry, I'm just watching the scene where the diver gets killed by the shark, and yeah, he is just wrestling with a shark. There's this human being and a shark, and then you cut away. So I think that was the publicized, like, that was Jose Marco. He died. I think that was the one that's supposed to be.
Mm.
Although in all the press it said he was playing Burt Reynolds' stunt double, and Burt Reynolds not in that scene for
Mhm.
like a while. Anyway, so yeah, so we have the funeral. Then they talk about they need a new diver, but it's got to be someone from the outside because the locals are all superstitious because they just killed a guy. Cut to Burt Reynolds driving a truck. He's a gun runner, stopped at the border, and his truck is searched. They can't find anything, and then it's just searched again because why not? And that's when they find guns, and a car chase ensues in which the chasing car disappears and is never seen again. But the chased car, Burt Reynolds' car, hits a rock, takes the brakes out, and careers off a cliff and explodes just after he manages to roll out into safety. So, I like a film, I like a good car chase, like an explosion. Wasn't expecting them in a shark film, because this isn't a shark film. So that's,
Should have been your first hint.
This is, have you seen The Wages of Fear or William Friedkin's Sorcerer?
I've seen Sorcerer.
Okay, I've seen Wages of Fear, but I haven't seen Sorcerer. But I got a real, it's the same story, just one the remake of the other. Yeah. So I got a real Wages of Fear vibe from this whole film. Like when he's just like stuck in this place and there's no way out and he's got to take a terrible job to get out. And that's kind of what that's what this film is, with some sharks.
Yeah.
And less tension. Wages of Fear, one of the tensest films I've ever seen. Excellent film.
Too.
I
need to
see it.
trade off.
We do, yes. And like, I really want to see. I don't know why I haven't seen Sorcerer. It's just, I just haven't. What I will one day. So Burt Reynolds' character Kane, he hitches a ride from a guy called Yusuf into town. Turns out Yusuf works at the hotel, or just knows the guy who runs the hotel, who is called Latala. Who is woken up from his bed where this is Latala, a big guy, which we are reminded of every time he is spoken of. Burt Reynolds calls him Fatso no fewer than 5 times in the film, often to his face. He also starts spreading around that everyone should start calling this guy Fatso as well. He's called a whale by one character. This isn't a pleasant film. This isn't a nice film. No one likes each other in this film.
I'm also like, is this like a bunch of 13-year-olds? Like, what's going on here?
Well, I liked the second scene where Kane's talking about Latala to the police chief, and he's like, "Oh yeah, Fatso over there," and the police chief's like, "Ah, it's a good name for him." Hey, everyone. So it's 13-year-olds, but it's dumb 13-year-olds.
The script's not working at a high level.
No, absolutely not. So Kane he's got a few coins to his name. He's got a little bit of money, the clothes on his back, and a watch. That's all he owns. And he tries to sell that watch for ages. But he gets a room for the night. The next day, he tries to have a shave. The razor is blunt. He makes the kind guy who got him the room and gave him a lift. He makes him hold the mirror so that he can try and shave, because everything Kane does is a red flag. Everything. Whether he's getting a kind guy to shave or whether he's beating up women. All of these are red flags. It all happens several times. Whether he befriends a child and just calls him Runt the whole film.
Yeah, it's not like you were like, oh, I thought I was watching a hero, and then I realized he's not. It's like the whole time you're like, no, he is a pretty horrible person.
Yes, like through and through. And it's kind of a shame that he is our hero. But hey, there we are. And he does know he's not a good guy as well. He refers himself as a son of a bitch. So he's it's fine. So there's like a drunken doctor at the hotel as well, who it fills Kane in on that the professor and Anna are looking for work, someone to work for them. Meanwhile, Professor and Anna are talking about, there's this guy Kane just come into town. We can use him to work for us. And the professor doesn't trust him because he's American, which fair enough. And no offense.
To say that. I'm allowed to say that.
And I'm just gonna move on past. So the town he's stuck in, he's told that it's 2 hours drive, but he hasn't got a car. To the nearest place he can get out. It's 2 hours drive. It's 1 month on a camel, which he hasn't got a camel, or if he goes on foot, he will die. So he needs money to get out of town, basically. And he tries to like trade his watch for a boat. No one's taking it. He finds a boat, takes it out onto the water. It immediately sinks, which was hilarious. I just enjoyed watching.
He's not super bright.
No, he's not.
He's a brute and he's pretty dumb.
Yep. So he finds out about the job, and the police officer doesn't believe that he's not a gun runner, but doesn't do anything about it really. And so he decides that he wants to get this job from Anna and the professor. So he needs a razor. Um, to quote him, yeah, he's talking to I think the doctor. He's like, "You got a razor that's less than 50 years old? Because I'm gonna get that job, even if I have to romance that broad." Is a direct quote from him. Meanwhile, Anna is to the professor, "You have nothing to worry about, even if I have to romance him, just to hire him." So these two are going to both romance each other to employ one another, basically. Which, I don't think the romantic subplot doesn't really go anywhere. I feel like it's because it's all a con, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not like an especially like tantalizing back and forth between the two of them. Like that kind of dynamic's been done a lot better in other movies.
Yeah, there's a few scenes of romance, but there's not like sparks of chemistry going on here. Sorry, the tagline on the poster of this is I've got in front of me is 1 shark, 2 shark, 3 shark, 4. Killer in the middle, killer no more. I don't know what film that's describing, but it's not this one because there's certainly not 4 sharks in this film. Anyway, it's a good poster, but it's a lying tagline.
It fooled me, Jay.
It fooled us all, Jess. It fooled us all. So he manages to shave, and he goes and sits looking out by the water one day, and Anna just kind of shows up and sits next to him, and she has a habit of lighting a cigarette and putting it in his mouth. He is a stranger to her. This is an odd thing to do, but she did it several times. I think did we skip over? Oh yeah, so when skipped over like Kane befriending the child. So there is the boy, Runt, played by Carlos Barry, who steals Kane's watch when he's trying to sell it. Kane steals some fruit and a neckerchief from the market, and then this boy steals his watch. I'm like, good, you've been stealing from people. What does he? And then Kane crashes the market, like wrecks the whole thing.
This was like Looney Tunes. Like the amount of unnecessary destruction this man causes is ridiculous.
It's like the kid runs through the market, Kane stops, turns, pushes a car over, continues chasing the child. He wrecks the whole thing. And this is not the only market he wrecks over the course of this film. This is a habit. He does this again.
It's like out of a spoof movie. Like, it's so over the top.
Absolutely, yeah. It's comical. But he chases the boy and catches up with him, makes him give the watch back, and then this is now his buddy. This is his friend, and he's going to teach him how to pickpocket because he's a great, he's a great role model. Here's Kane. Hey, you child, I will teach you to steal things. Like
take
me.
You out into dangerous situations.
Yes, and this kid is also smoking all the time. This kid is like 8 and smoking all the time, every scene.
And you know they had that little kid actor smoking. Like
100%.
This movie had no scruples with doing anything like that.
Just trying to see. I thought, hey, let's get morbid. When did Carlos Barry die? How old was he? But it's not on IMDb. This is his only acting credit. I can only assume he passed away seconds after they stopped filming his last scene.
Oh, God.
Just from all of the cancer.
Also, Jay, like, at what point were you like, was this movie highly problematic?
Well, the smoking kid didn't help.
Like, I was like, I don't really like all of this, like, depictions of the Sudanese. Like, is this...
Sure, yeah.
I'm not sure if this is...
Like, this must have been set, like, contemporary due to all of the cars and things. This isn't, like, set in the 1700s or something. This would have been a 1960s set film. Yeah.
It's filmed in Mexico, and a lot of the actors are Hispanic, playing people from Sudan. So I'm like, Yeah, I guess representation wasn't necessarily uh good during much of this period in film history, but it definitely does not hold up.
Well, I mean, we've had a couple of American air quotes films populated mainly with Italian people. They make shark films where they can, basically. So yeah, like Deep Blue Sea 2 and 3 were both shot in and around South Africa, I think. But then 3 at least is set in South Africa with like just outsiders who have come and set up camp there, basically. And 2, I can't remember where 2 is set. I know it's in Achilles. That's the Aquatica of 2. This doesn't matter. It's fine. I think it might be South Africa because Dr. Misty Calhoun is doing a tour. She's teaching somewhere, and she goes from there. Anyway, we'll cover that again at some point, I'm sure. So I haven't watched Deep Blue Sea 2 or 3 since we covered them on these shows, and you have never seen them. So because you didn't join us for either of those films, did you? 2 and 3.
No, I didn't.
Okay, well, you'll watch them one day, I promise you. I will force you to. Good. Next time we see each other, I'm going to make you watch 2 and 3. We'll have a Deep Blue Sea marathon
Oh, wonderful.
in Baltimore, in Scotland, in Norway, wherever we next see each other. That's what we're going to watch.
It sounds like a great use of time.
I mean, wherever we are, it will rain one day, I'm sure. So we can just stay in and do a Deep Blue Sea marathon. It sounds like you're on board, so good. Where did we get? Yeah, so he's turned Runt upside down, got his watch back, made a deal with him, etc. And Runt's going to help him. Seriously, this kid has no other name. I don't feel good calling him Runt. It's that or the kid. So I'm going to call him the kid. So the kid is going to like help him find a way out, and in return, Kane's going to teach him how to pickpocket. Great. So where do we go from there? Kane and Anna have a kind of a date. He's trying to buy her a drink. He finally trades his watch for 2 drinks and 6 coins. When he goes back to the table, Anna says, like, Anna offers to buy a drink, to which Kane's reply is, the last time a lady bought me a drink, she was no lady. Which adds to the problematic nature of the film, I think. I don't know if he was implying she wasn't, like, morally a lady, physically, I don't know. There's no good way for that sentence to be taken, so let's just leave it where it is. And but then the kid steals the watch back and gives it back to Kane. Very obviously, it's so blatant what happens. But they Kane and Anna have a dance, and then we have some prime flirting conversation, in which she's trying to feel out how good he is enough to hire, and she asks, "How much do you know about machines?" And he replies, "About as much as I know about women." She then says, "How much do you know about women?" He says, "Ask me." And her reply to that is, "Can you handle a winch?" And to which his reply, "Honey, I was delivered by one." Jess, what does that mean?
Oh, man, it was at this point in the movie where I was like, ooh, maybe this guy does have something going on. Because that line was killer.
Oh, what does it mean?
I guess winch is a tool, and
Right.
wench is a term for a woman.
Okay,
A
sure.
derogatory term, and he is trying to make a pun.
I hadn't even considered this angle. So if he was delivered by one, that's the nurse or the doctor who
I think he's
delivered him?
implying his wife. I mean, I think he's implying his mother was a wench.
Okay, sure. It's not an angle I had considered. I generally was like, what do you delivered by a winch? How would a because that's the kind of thing you have on the end of a crane that lifts things up and down. That's
Like instead of
was
a
he?
crane, like flying to deliver a baby, you just have like a winch shoot through the wall of your house, and there's a little baby dangling from it in a basket.
I was envisioning like when during labor his mother was like upside down and he was extracted from her via a crane. And that was an unpleasant image that I've now planted in the minds of all the listeners. You're welcome.
I also like maybe this writer didn't even think this through. It's possible they didn't even like know what they were saying.
Maybe. By the way, this is a successful bout of flirting, and he somehow he gets the job, and the next scene he's on the boat with Anna and the professor. He's at the tiller, shirtless, and they go out to sea, and the professor goes diving, and they have a little. We get some explanation as to what Anna and the professor are doing, which is the professor is trying to solve world hunger with ocean resources, but he hates fish. So this is a very poor cover story for what's actually going on, I think.
This was extremely confusing, and I kept waiting for them to explain further, but I think they were just really bad at coming up with a cover. Like,
Yes, I think that's true. Yeah, but Kane buys it. Kane believes the situation.
yeah, I was bewildered. I was like, what could possibly be down there that they're finding? This makes no sense.
Yeah, but so
Like, the cover story, it makes no sense.
well, fortunately, Kane not too bright, so it doesn't need to make sense. And
He's on the boat going off about winches.
maybe he doesn't know what a winch is. Maybe that's something like we delivered by a winch. Yes, and he means like forceps or something. So he stays up on deck with Anna. It's unclear why they needed him when his job was to just wait on the boat, which Anna seems quite capable of doing, and indeed has to do later in the film. But there we are. So he's up on the boat. Professor goes diving, and there's a shipwreck underneath, which we saw the diver at the start of the film exploring. And he's doing something down there. We're not quite sure what. He is doing some underwater welding, or it's something like a blowtorch. I think it's like cutting. But as we've learned from our regular guest Kevin Culp, who has watched many more terrible shark movies than we have, anybody who does underwater welding in a film will die, and it's good to see that trend continues. It hasn't happened yet, but the professor does not survive the film. So that's chalk another one up for Kevin. He got another one right. So whilst he's down there, Kane is just toying around with the boat and is apparently testing the engines. But there's some banter between him and Anna that sounds more like he's planning to just ride off with the boat, and that's going to be his ticket out of there. What was he going to do with Anna is unclear. Whether she's going to come with him, or he's going to kick her overboard, or I don't know. He keeps testing the engines, and the professor hears this. It startles him, and he cuts his shoulder on something in the wreck, and it starts bleeding. And he's like, "Well, there's sharks down here. I gotta get out." And so he swims as fast as he can to the surface, bleeding all the way, but gets out fine. No, he's not dead yet.
Well, I am positive that this wound would have been greatly infected, and he probably would have died from this wound.
Quite possibly.
Because that ship was gnarly. He's getting tetanus for sure. Tetanus.
Yeah, and given it's near a coral reef, I think. I don't know if the ship's been down there long enough for the coral to start forming around the boat and consuming that as part of it, which is always cool when that happens. But I would imagine coral can infect things as well. That's alive. But hey, he gets out and he's fine. But Kane notices that along with the very vividly red paint blood on him, there's also some oil, which is it's interesting. You don't get oil from a coral, which is what
I didn't know what the hell that was.
I didn't. I had to go back in my notes and write oil because it's 3 scenes later where they talk about it.
I thought it gross, fleshy substance. It did not look like oil to me.
I thought he was looking at that doesn't look like blood, but then it's a film from the 60s with a low budget, so I don't know. But I'm glad they give that context later in the film when most people have forgotten this scene. But they get back, and then the doctor attends to Professor. Meanwhile, Anna and Kane get to know each other a bit better. They lie on the beach late at night after a late night swim. and has to do some more chatting. And then Anna reveals that the professor isn't her partner. He just kind of like picked her up one day and just traveled the world with her, and she has learned to love him, but like a father. Kane doesn't believe that. She slaps him. They kiss as the tide comes in and drags them out to sea and drowns them. Basically, they survive. It's fine.
Did this scene look really bizarre to you? Like the camera
What do
work,
you mean? In what way?
it looked like it was like jumping. Like the frame rate was weird or something. Like every time they moved, it was like a weird jarring look to it. And I don't know if it was just what I was watching it on because it happened at another point in the movie, or if this was like on every version that you could watch of this movie.
Well, the version that I watched was on YouTube, in which the audio became progressively more out of sync as the film went on.
Oh boy.
It was fine for like the first half, but yeah, it was fine. I worked out what was happening, but I didn't have this issue. So maybe the version you watched had this same issue, and then to correct it, they jumped the film here and there. They skipped it a little bit. Who knows? Yeah, but so I thought I think it was shot day for night. I think where they just shot it during the day and made it darker, which often looks strange. But I'm no expert at that kind of thing, so I can't say. But there seems to be more like highlights and on the waves than I was expecting to see. But yeah, so they're getting busy on the beach, and then one other thing about Latella, the big guy at the hotel, is he's always wearing very tight American ship t-shirts, like the USS Saratoga, the USS Texas, that kind of thing. Never explained, never referred to. That's just all he wears, these white t-shirts with these boat names on. So good. So some time has passed because the professor is now all healed. The doctor gives him the go-ahead that he can dive again. Unclear as to how long that's been. But it's long enough for one sequence of the Kane and the kid to see each other across this long stone walkway and run at each other in slow motion, like they're in a big wheat field in a romance film. It's just bizarre choice. But there we are. Kane distrusts everything that's going on. He tries to find out some more information, and he and the kid go at night and steal the professor's diving equipment. Goes diving himself, finds the shipwreck, doesn't go inside that much, but he finds it and so realizes, oh, this isn't solving world hunger. There's some good stuff in there. The kid's up on the surface keeping watch, except for as the kid kind of gets bored or worried, I wasn't sure, but he just jumps in the water before Kane gets back. Doesn't get knocked in, doesn't fall in. He's like, well, I guess I'm going in, and just jumps in.
Like, what did he was going to do?
I don't know. I mean, kids are stupid sometimes. It's just a fact. And when I was a kid, I know there were times where I would be like, I'm left on my own. I would panic, and I feel like this is something I might have done as a child. Also, we have been told that it's like miles and miles away from land, because when in the previous scene between Anna and Kane, they say like no one could possibly swim back. But in some of the shots with the kids on the surface, you can see land very close. So I don't know. Either way, Kay manages to save the kid, drags him to safety. It's all fine. So it's just a little moment of tension in the film that was not required. But it turns out that the wreck is of the Victoria. But that doesn't really mean much to anyone yet. But Kane goes to the professor at night, wakes him up, him and Anna, and demands to be an equal partner in whatever is down there. And then they all fight. It's a big fight scene. And Kane takes them both out. He punches Anna in the face. Because she's going to attack him, I guess. But still, it doesn't look good for your hero to just be beating out his love interest in the dark.
No. He seemed like a complete psycho in this scene.
Yes, absolutely. He's not a good guy. And once he's beaten them all, he says, we're all going to be one big happy family. Happy father indicates to the professor. Happy daughter indicates to Anna. Happy son of a bitch indicates to himself. So, great. Uh, and because like the professor said like you can have everything that's down there, and he's like, no, I want to have half. I want my half. And I'm sorry, shouldn't it be a third? There's three of you. But whatever. Um, so after this, the professor goes to Latala and says, Latala, you're a big fat ball of blubber, a big fat stinking whale. But around a whale are his friends. And Latala reads through this, this beautiful language, like, this guy needs my help. He needs some of my men to go and rough up Kane. So, um, but like, how do you win somebody over? You call him a big fat ball of blubber. You call him a fat stinking whale. Great. There's no other way of doing that.
So unnecessary.
Yeah.
Like, what did this guy ever do? We never see him do anything that's like worthy of all this anger.
And like, he seems some kind of mob boss with all the
Hey,
connections that he has.
that man, he's just laying around with chicks all the time.
Yeah. He has 101 acting credits. This is a guy called Manuel Alvarado,
Oh,
who he's over 100. All it seems mostly like Spanish language. Um, Something called The Phantom Gunslinger in 1970. Yeah, not a lot with English titles. But I mean, good for him. He's
yeah.
working. Or, yeah. Oh, he's in the Magnificent Seven. He's a bartender in the original Magnificent Seven, 1960,
Huh.
with Steve McQueen. Excellent. Good. Fantastic. Very happy for the guy. Good. Um, so yeah, he some of his. So the next day we see Kane out with the kid, just walking around, and everywhere they go. Oh no, Kane goes to the kid and hey kid, you ever slept in a hotel? Wink, wink. And the kid's like, me in a hotel? He's like, come on, kid, come back to my room. And in other films, this would be an extremely wrong, terrible scene. Just a guy going up to a kid and bringing him back to his hotel. And like this 2024, you would write the scene differently. Um, uh, but they don't. That's how it is. But everywhere they turn, some of Latala's men, and Kane's fighting them off pretty easily, but then the kid gets like knocked down the stairs and is knocked out, and so Kane picks him up and runs him back to the hotel where the doctor is. But the doctor is going through his weekly DTs because he's a drunk, and this is what happens. But in order to sober him up, they give him more drink because he'll be useless. He's useless without his drink, so they drunk him up a little bit to get him to that neutral point of drunkenness, so he can operate on a child. And to clear some room, did you see what happened? The space. Burt Reynolds has to clear a table for the kid to be put on. Did you see what was on that table that gets roughly like cast aside?
I don't recall. What was it?
A live chicken.
Oh my
There
gosh.
is just an actual moving around chicken that actual man Burt Reynolds just slaps out of the way. For...
What did I say at the beginning of this movie? When that card came up, I said, this is going to be a very unethically filmed movie.
This film not dedicated to the poultry that we see harmed in the film.
Yeah. I'm worried about this child actor too.
I've never worked again. Never seen again.
He's probably scarred for life.
Possibly literally. And so the doctor operates on him. At one point, Kane says to the professor, if that boy dies, you've caught your last fish. But the doctor's successful. The kid survives. It's all fine. But he's just like out for a little while. And at this sequence of the professor and Anna hiring men to kill Kane, almost killing a child, and feeling guilty about it, everyone's now fine to work together. This is all. Everyone's just like, hey, that was a pretty serious turn of events. Partners. Great. So now they're working together, and once the doctor once the kid is healthy again, the doctor comes to him and like, hey, I did some surgery on you. You owe me a bottle of booze, you child. You 8-year-old, get me a bottle of alcohol. And the kid's like, no, I want a cigar. Me, a child, wants a cigar. And the doctor's like, you're too young to smoke. The kid's like, you're too old to drink, and everyone has a deep look at themselves and what they do with their lives. So, uh,
What did you think of this doctor character? Like,
he's
did you
second
think
build.
he added some like good color to the movie, or did you find him deeply annoying? And does
I
my
didn't
question
find.
offer a hint of how I felt?
I'm guessing you found him quite annoying. Uh, I didn't find him that annoying. I tend to gravitate towards the kind of comedic side characters of these kinds of films. So without him, I would have liked this film less. So
See,
he was useful in that respect, I think.
I feel like I normally appreciate that, but I think it was just maybe it was just this amount of sweat. Like
Sure.
he was always just sweating profusely, and everything he said was just it was just a little too much for me or something. But it may have been majority the sweat because this is a sweaty movie. There are
I mean, the
movies,
Sudan's a pretty
just
hot
one of
place.
them, like
If
Sorcerer, Cool Hand Luke, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Shark. Those are all sweaty movies.
you're forgetting Con Air, a very sweaty film. Uh,
Can I forget?
I mean, Baby O sweating every scene he's in. It's like sweats through the chair he's sat on. But so there's this guy, the Doctor, is played by Arthur Kennedy, who was also in Lawrence of Arabia. As is like one of his most prominent films, and I've seen nothing else he was in. But he did some like The Man from Laramie. He was in the 50s. I think is that a Jimmy Stewart Western? I want to say yes. There's a Jimmy Stewart Anthony Mann Western. Good, that I have not seen. But so he's like he's a reputable actor. 103 acting credits. But the Sudan's a warm place. The sweat made sense to me. Um, I wasn't bothered by these people who were living in this desert town sweating.
I mean,
Because
it's realistic, but you know, yeah, just wipe it a little bit. Like I don't need to see all of it.
I mean, if I was there, I'd have drowned people in my sweat. It would have been a very unpleasant way to go, but people would have done. Uh, so yeah, I thought the Doctor was fine. Maybe too drunk, but that's his character. So
He wasn't the worst character in the movie. I'll
true,
give him
yes.
that.
Who would top that list for you? Because there's a lot of contenders.
Well, one of the notes I have on my list of notes just says Burt is a real asshole. So I think he must rank as the worst for me in this movie.
Yeah, it'd be hard to disagree. So the kid's fine, the Doctor's fine, I guess. They're back to diving again. I don't think we actually see the kid and the Doctor again, but that's fine. Yeah, everything else is just the final scene sequence now, out at sea. So they're out diving. Kane and the Professor both go diving together, and in the ship, in the wreck of the Victoria, chest full of gold bars, like loads of them, like a considerable amount, and that's what they're for. That's what they've been going for each time is the gold bars. So they've got this little basket. They put like 10 gold bars in it. That between the two of them, they can just about drag it and they kind of kangaroo it along the bottom of the floor of the ocean, and then take it to the winch. And Anna lifts it up. She does that once, and then lowers the basket back down again. And we keep seeing sharks all the time. We haven't seen sharks yet. We're going to see them soon. Because as soon as that first one's up, when the second basket starts to go up, they notice there's these fish heads floating down from the surface, bobbing past people. And this is when you start to see sharks.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they get one more basket of gold, and then the Professor gets eaten by a shark. Ken gets attacked and starts fighting off with his knife, and then the Professor is gone. I found this sequence to be quite clumsily edited. It wasn't obvious because there's no dialogue when they're under the water, obviously.
Yeah.
There's quite loud like sparking noises from the blowtorchy thing, which I'm not sure how loud that would be underwater, but you know. But there's no dialogues. You can't really tell who is who at various points. You keep on seeing close-up shots of eyes, but I can't tell whose eyes they are.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't clear to me who was attacking and everything, apart from when a knife was drawn. The professor said earlier that you shouldn't do that because if you cut a shark, it's just going to attract more sharks. So when a knife was drawn, I was like, well, that must be Kane. Uh, but yeah, so the professor gone, taken out. Kane gets to the surface, realizes what's happened, that Anna, or that the water has been chummed. And his theory is that Anna has chummed the water because she wants to steal the gold. So he gets out and slaps her in the face, calls her a rotten bitch, and kind of knocks her out, basically. Only for the police chief, the dastardly police chief, Inspector Baroque, to show up. And
She was a heavy all along.
one of the other heavies, the 12th heavy in this film. And so he had been the whole Machiavellian scheme was all his. He had found out about the sunken wreckage. He had told the professor about it. He had told the doctor to tell Kane about it. He's the puppet master of this whole affair. It's pulling all these strings. He knew it was going to happen now because he said to the professor that he was going to kick Kane. He was going to arrest Kane. And the professor's like, give me one more day. I need him for one more day. So he knew it was going to happen then. I was you dastardly police chief, you're the real villain here. So he makes Kane start loading the gold onto the police boat and undoes a valve to start flooding the professor's boat, which the water starts flooding in. But as Kane is loading the gold, he grabs the winch. He uses it again, the winch chain, throws it at the inspector, which kind of distracts him enough for Kane to grab him and throw him into the sea. Which was fun. It's a fun action scene at the end.
Yeah. It's always fun to see, the upper hand changing.
Yeah. So there's a big scream. He gets eaten by sharks. And Kane kind of apologizes to Anna, who wakes up. Like, apologizes for hitting her. But because now he realizes that she couldn't possibly have been the one who jumped the water and was trying to steal the gold. Until she pulls a gun on him! Twist! But twist back! Straight line! It's actually, she was the bad guy. Or she doesn't think she can trust Kane. I think she thinks if they split it, he'll try and come for the rest at some point. So she's trying to screw him over early on.
Seems like a fair assumption.
Yeah. And so she pulls a gun on him. She forces him onto the police boat, and he's like, "Are you sure about this? We can work this out, half and half, whatever." And she's like, "Nope." She throws some cigarettes and a lighter at him, and sends him and then sets off on her way. And he's just kind of, he knows that the boat's sinking. She doesn't know the boat's sinking. And that's how the film ends. I enjoyed this end. Twistiness. Twists on twists on twists. I liked it. Yeah. Best part of the film.
Yeah, it definitely left it on a good note, at least. Not enough to make me forget everything that came before,
Sure.
But it kept it from being like truly like it kept it from being like, oh, this is one of like the most unenjoyable movies I've ever seen, to just being like, that was a pretty bad movie that I didn't really need to watch.
The most unenjoyable films you've ever seen. I'm sorry.
You know what I did enjoy, though? Every time a shark appeared on screen, I went, shark!
Exclamation mark. Yeah. Now, how would you feel about this film if it was called Kane? Did you think you'd like it more or less?
Less. I would never
We'd never have seen it, for one thing.
Yeah, that's true. I would never have picked this movie if it was called Kane. The exclamation point did all the heavy lifting.
What about Man-Eater?
I still would have skipped it on the list.
Of the 5 titles that this film could have had, of His Bones Are Coral, Twist of the Knife, Kane, Man-Eater, and Shark, rank them, please. Rank those 5 titles. Which do you think is the best?
Well, number one is definitely Shark.
Yes, agreed.
Um, Two, I feel like Kane is probably a pretty solid name for the movie. Um, and then three, I would go with His Bones Are Coral. Is that what it was?
Yes, that's
I
just
mean,
a great turn of phrase.
yeah, that just sounds cool. And then four would be Twist of the Knife. And then five would be Maneater, because that just sounds like, they didn't even try.
Yeah, Maneater could be any kind of creature feature or Hall & Oates biopic. It could be
Yeah.
it's like the song writes itself. Oh, here she comes. But it's not a good title for a film. I agree. Although
Yeah.
I think there is at least one other film called Maneater that we're probably going to cover at some point on this show. So maybe I'll revise this take then. But I love the title of His Bones Are Coral. I don't know who that's talking about, but I like the title.
Yeah.
I'm not going to
Yeah.
read the book. Who
And
has the time?
Maneater just lacks, the whimsy of shark.
It's not. There's a hyphen, but that's the only punctuation you get. You need that exclamation mark. Yeah. Great. Yeah. So that's the plot of Shark. Which yeah, you don't need to see this. If you're trying to watch shark films, don't watch Shark. Unfortunately, it's a non-essential shark movie.
And
A friend of mine
say,
who listens to this show is probably going to watch it because he likes Burt Reynolds. That's fine. If you're a Burt Reynolds fan, this is more suited for Burt Reynolds fans than it is for shark fans, I think.
yeah. And I'll say I went into this like not necessarily expecting like super high quality, but I kind of thought it might be kind of like B movie fun, maybe like retroactively like a bit campy or something. And what I got, it was just none of those things. It didn't hit.
Yeah, it didn't hit. But yeah, you've been on to some good films. Like you've picked three good films in the past. So you were due a dud, I guess.
Have you done Rogue yet? Because I kept pitching Rogue.
We haven't done. I think we're gonna do a reptile season or something where we
Oh,
just talk about a bunch of alligators. So that's kind of saving it for then. And I think Mark wants to talk about Rogue, so we'll have you on to talk. So you are down to talk about Rogue at some point. I still
yeah.
haven't seen it.
A movie I
Uh,
watched once and think I liked, and keep just saying that I will go on the podcast for.
you
And
definitely will, yeah.
I hope it's as fun as I remember.
Because we've got Rogue, Crawl is a favourite of both mine and Mark's. We both have talked about Crawl many, many a time, but never done an episode dedicated to it that we definitely will. And Blackwater and Blackwater Abyss, I think, are because we've done Lake Placid. Don't care for Lake Placid. There are sequels to Lake Placid. I wonder if any of those have a third act. The first one just kind of ends. Lake Placid. Why? I don't know why people still talk about that film. It's just kind of, it's not good. But there's two sequels and a versus Anaconda. Sorry, there's four sequels and a versus Anaconda. There are 6 films in the Lake Placid franchise. This feels too many. They're probably working on more now. I don't know. They're all on the list. Mega Shark versus Crocosaurus. That could be done then. But then there's the whole Mega Shark franchise. We still have. Just looking at my spreadsheet, I still have 303 films as yet untouched on this show.
Oh my goodness.
They keep making shark films, Jess. They keep making them.
Have you done Alligator? I believe
Nope.
that's what it's called, like the older
Yes.
movie.
There's Alligator and then there's Alligator 2. I think Mark loves the
watched that
second
when I
one.
was like 6, and that movie scarred me. Like, I still think about that pool scene.
I've not seen it.
Oh,
The
okay.
first one
Right.
or the second one. But I think
I
they're
will
both on
say
Shudder.
it more, but there is a pool, and when I was a child, because we watched a lot of like movies that would be on like TCM where they're black and white, so they're not like they didn't feel like that scary when I was growing up, I guess.
Sure.
So we would watch, like The Blob or things like that. Um, but there's one scene in Alligator that did impact me as a child.
See, I feel like this is where my love of Deep Blue Sea comes from, in that was the only like monster movie horror kind of thing that I watched as a child. My family did not watch horror films. My mum's least favorite film of all time is Carrie. I've never heard her even talk about any other kind of horror film at all. It's just a genre that didn't exist in I guess it's like genre films didn't exist in our house. Like my family still have famously never seen a Star Wars, not a one, nor a Star Trek. My dad just doesn't like sci-fi, but we'll watch action films. All the Die Hards, they're covered. The Jurassic Parks, obviously. They go beyond any kind of genre, which is perfect. But no, like I didn't watch any kind of horror films growing up. And so, like Deep Blue Sea, I was like, wait, I can garner entertainment from watching people die? Well, this is all new to me. And I've loved them ever since. Like even when I started blogging, if you told me like you're gonna have a podcast where it's like at least partially dedicated to horror films, that would have been a big surprise to me. Because I never really watched horror, but now I love it, and I would like to watch more. But my wife hates horror films, so we don't get to watch many. Which I get it. Horror films aren't for everyone. So I watch them when I can. Still haven't seen the new Evil Dead. It's been on Netflix for months, like a year at this point. Oh well. I think I'm rambling, so that'll do it for Shark. Is there anything else that we skipped over that we missed, or any other notes you had that we didn't get to?
No, I think I covered all my notes.
Nice.
Yeah. Well,
okay, well then
I will just say that like it was right around the time when the doctor is like stitching up the I don't even remember his name. The
professor?
The guy that Anna is with. The professor, yes.
Yeah.
And Rob just turns to me and says, I think this movie may be a waste of time. And then he proceeded to go to sleep for like the rest of the movie. I think he woke up right at the ending.
That's perfect. Therefore explaining why Rob has not been on the podcast. He is welcome to come on any day. But I know that he's kind of retired from podcasting, so I get it. But yeah, I mean, there's numerous films that we've covered that I've watched with Asia, with my wife, that she's probably done a similar thing, or there are several where she's like halfway through gone, why did this film get made? Why do people watch this, and why do people listen to you talk about it? Three valid questions for many of the films we covered. But the answer to all of them is because we like it, because it's fun to be had, and sometimes the fun is had discussing more so than watching. But there we are. So we have 2 features left to do. How is Shark? Similar to Deep Blue Sea. Now in the past you've had your own list that you've spotted of things. Did you do a list this time? Because last time you said you had a list, and then I ignored that you had a list, did my whole list, and never even asked you what was on your list, and then your message afterwards apologizing for that massive oversight.
I did not make a list.
Okay, no worries. That's fine. I just had to check. That wasn't on my list, so great.
Someone wears a wetsuit.
Also not on my list. Okay, things that are on my list. Swimming with a shark. Our main character is a smuggler. There are explosives. There's a dance scene. There's awkward flirting by water. There's talk about diving experience. Someone talks about somebody else dying in the world's greatest laboratory, which feels a little bit like Aquatica, I guess. When in the scene after the fight where Kane's like, we're going to do everything together. That reminded me of the scene between Carter and Scoggins. We're like, we'll do everything right together. Everything right together. There's bird cruelty. Because of the whole, slapping a chicken over a table and all the stuff the bird goes through in Deep Blue Sea. Discussion of past criminal record. Serving drinks. Opening a valve to flood something with water. A lighter is thrown. It ends with a boat on the horizon. And, this is very early in the film, somebody lights a cigarette before there's an arm injury. Because when they're searching his truck, he lights a cigarette and then slams his hand in the door. And in Deep Blue Sea, Jim has a cigarette and then his arm gets eaten. Exactly the same sequence. No. And finally, how deep and how blue is Shark? So listeners, as I watch the film, as most people do, I believe, I estimate how deep the action is at any given point and work out the average depth of the action in the film, and also how blue the screen is at any point, what percentage blue it is, and then work out roughly what percentage blue the film is overall. So Deep Blue Sea is, of course, about 14.5 meters or 47.5 feet deep and about 31% blue. Jess, do you think Shark is deeper and or bluer than Deep Blue Sea?
No.
No to both.
No to both.
Okay, you're half right.
Ah.
It is not deeper, but it is a little bluer. Because when they're underwater, it is blue, and they're underwater for big stretches of the time. But there's also a lot of time like on the surface, which is also quite blue as well. So this worked out being depth-wise. Depth-wise, we didn't have an exact figure of the depth. So I looked up other shipwrecks off of the coast of Sudan. And there is a ship, I can't remember the name of it, but there's a ship that's wrecked. It's about 36 meters deep, so it's like 100 feet. So I took it to be, when they're in the ship, that's about how deep they are. I work with what I've got. So that estimates out at being about 5.87 meters or 19.25 feet deep, which means it is deeper than Deep Rising, but less deep than Beyond the Poseidon Adventure. So it's 26th. It's our 26th deepest film to date. Blueness, this works out being about 39.12% blue. I should say about, and then give you 2 decimal places. Which means it is bluer than Piranha 3D, less blue than Swim Fan. Film I always forget exists. Swim Fan. So yeah, it is our 27th bluest film. So it's right next to each other in the depth and blueness overall rankings. So good. And we now have 100. There's 100 in this table. Although the order that they're coming out, this is actually be like 99 because there's still, I think, one that we've recorded that hasn't come out yet. But if you head to my Letterboxd, which is JAYCLUIT, my name, you can see I've got lists of all the deep blue rankings on there of the deepest and the bluest films. So go check that out. Give those lists a like if you fancy. But Jess, that'll do it for Shark. Do you have anything you'd like to plug? Anything you wish to promote?
No, but when I was talking about Alligator, I looked up when Alligator came out because I was like, I don't think that movie was black and white, and it came out in 1980, so it definitely was not black and white. And it just reminded me of how, because what you were talking about with your childhood viewing, I probably watched that movie with my mom on the Sci-Fi Channel, and my mom was always watching the Sci-Fi Channel and Jurassic Park growing up. So I think she instilled a love of monster movies in me. I know that's completely off topic from what you were talking about.
Not at all. That's fantastic. I watched so few films with my mum growing up. I can remember, like, Mary Poppins being on quite a lot of a film I adore, but I don't know if she even likes that. And just like Disney films, some Disney films, not all of them. We're not a big film family, my family, as you may have picked up from the conversation we had earlier. But I rebelled by liking films. That's how I rebelled. No other way, just that, and not going into banking is how I rebelled. Good. So listeners,
I was like, I'm not going into banking, Mom and Dad.
So listeners, you can find this podcast all over social media at Deep Blue Sea Pod. If you have some film recommendations of other alligator films we'll cover during our reptile season at some point, then email us deepblueseapod@gmail.com. You can find everything Mark does over at moviesfilmsandflicks.com, and he's going to be back next week. Why would I click away from the schedule at such a crucial moment? He's going to be back next week as we talk about the third Hunger Games film, as we continue our journey through the Deep Blue scenes of the Hunger Games films with the least Deep Blue Sea adjacent, the Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1. I watched it recently. There's some water in there, not a lot, but we'll find some stuff to talk about. Mark worked on that film, so we're going to talk about that.
Oh, are they underground?
They are.
So
They
you
are
have
pretty deep.
some deep.
Yeah, and I think whilst underground, there's like the sprinklers are going off whilst
Oh,
they're running down some stairs. So I think I put a little blue marking on that in my notes. I was like, we could maybe talk about this. So who knows? Maybe we'll talk about that next week. But
Teaser.
as spoilers for next week, we'll find the one scene with water in it. We'll talk about it. Although they are next to a river at one point as well. It's close enough. That's good enough. So come back next week for that. But as for today's show, as for Shark, thank you once again to my guest Jess Manzo.
Shark. I just had to throw in one more time.
Perfect.
I had to get my own in. Thanks for having me. It's always a blast to come on the Deep Blue Sea podcast.
Always a blast to have you on here as well. It's been too long. But I have been Jake Lure, and we'll Deep Blue see you next week. Shark!